One of Australia's pioneering pollsters has criticised the misuse of political research in the recent federal election. He's also warned modern politics is at risk of being dictated to by the narrow prejudices of focus group research. Rod Cameron, who's about to retire after 40 years of polling and focus group work, including more than 50 election campaigns, has described Labor's recent federal election campaign as the worst ever. Lateline's Margot O'Neill spoke with him earlier today.
When he pioneered the use of focus groups in politics, especially during the Hawke Labor government, Rod Cameron was criticised for being too populist. But now, on the eve of retirement, Rod Cameron is the one unloading on Labor Party officials who he says have ditched leadership for hollow men politics.
The link behind why the government found itself in trouble was the dreaded focus group, Margot. I mean, the focus group has a long and proud history in government campaigning and political campaigning, but it's being so grievously misused by this present Labor Party, so grievously misused. I think all they do, they go out and find a list of prejudices, usually in Western Sydney, and convince the leader of the day, well, this is a problem. We must run away from it. We can't touch it. This is not the way to use focus groups, but this is the way it was used. The ETS is apparently a problem. We can't touch it. Debt, it's a problem. Run away from it. The building the education revolution. Oh, it's a problem in the focus groups. Don't touch it.
Rod Cameron thinks political research is now dictating policy.
Modern campaigning has become so dependent on the market research to the point where it's vastly overplaying its usefulness. It's a useful adjunct to help explain policy. It shouldn't be used as an excuse for making policy. And it shouldn't be used as an excuse for ignoring problems. I mean, when Keating and Hawke were in power, they managed, particularly Keating, they managed to educate the Australian electorate onto the basics of how the economy works. Can you imagine Keating? He would have given such short shrift to these focus group guys and said, well, you shouldn't do one of your major elements of policy because it hasn't tested well in the focus group. You can imagine they would have been laughed out of court. The ETS could have been explained, but the government didn't have any real attempt at doing so. It's tried to say it's a communication problem. It is, but it is more serious than that. It's the fact that the leadership at the time accepted the verdict of inexperienced and naive focus group moderators and accepted their findings at face value.
Prime Minister declares war on obesity.
Childhood obesity.
Oh, did that come out of the focus groups?
Yeah.
So childhood obesity is a big problem, is it?
Yeah, look, it's a huge
that's
problem.
Great.
The ideology's dead, but that doesn't necessarily have to be replaced by the hollow men, although, at least in the case of the Labor Party, it is the case.
So how do you rate this campaign?
It's the worst federal campaign I've ever seen. The fact that Labor just snuck into government is an absolute disgrace. Labor should have romped home this election. Voters in Middle Australia are now wise to spin. They're ahead of the game. They know when spin is being delivered, and they are so cynical. So they don't believe most of what politicians say. There is absolutely no point in this mindless repetition of meaningless slogans. Moving forward, what did it last? It lasted a day and a half, I think, and it then went, but it was replaced by nothing. So what were we really voting Labor for? I'm not quite sure in the end. Julia Gillard, I think she'll turn out to be a very fine leader, but we saw none of that during the campaign. I don't know who run the campaigns, but whoever were running the campaigns, I certainly wouldn't have them running any others.
Rod Cameron is due to finally bow out at the end of next month. Margot O'Neill, Lateline.